He spent his last credits on clothes for a frozen alien woman, then invited her aboard his ship. The docks of Chiron Station always smelled faintly of rust, ozone, and desperation. Merchants shouted about cargo discounts, starship crews bargained for repairs they couldn't afford, and refugees clustered near the airlocks, hoping for any chance to escape to another world. Jalen brushed past them all, his boots clicking against the Durasteel floor. He had exactly 60 credits left in his account, barely enough for a cheap meal and some fuel rations for his old freighter, the Wanderer's Luck. That wasn't much of a future. He was about to head back to his ship when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a statue, something carved of ice and crystal, abandoned by a careless trader. But then the faintest plume of breath misted from her lips. A woman, curled against a wall, her skin pale with frost, her silvery hair tangled and frozen in clumps. She wore nothing but ragged remnants of fabric, hardly enough to cover her thin frame. Her eyes opened just a sliver when she sensed him near. They were luminous, shifting like liquid starlight. "Please," her voice was barely a whisper, cold. Jalen stopped in his tracks. He knew the look of someone abandoned by the galaxy. He had seen it in war orphans on burned colonies, in miners cheated of wages, in his own reflection more times than he cared to admit. And yet he had only 60 credits. He glanced toward the nearest vendor, a stall hung with second-hand clothes, patched but warm. The merchant, a grizzled Torok with 4 arms, noticed Jalen looking. "You buy?" the merchant rasped. "Good price." 30 credits for a thermal wrap. Jalen's gut twisted. 30 credits would leave him with almost nothing. But he looked back at the woman, trembling, her lips turning blue. If he walked away, she wouldn't last another hour. "Wrap it," he said. The merchant grinned, snapping his lower hands together, and shoved a folded thermal cloak into Jalen's arms. Jalen knelt and draped it over the woman's shoulders. She flinched at his touch at first, then sagged into the warmth, clutching the fabric close. Color began to seep back into her cheeks. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, as though trying to understand why he had done this. "You help," she whispered. Jalen nodded. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere safe." The Wanderer's Luck was hardly a ship worth showing off. Her engines whined, her wiring was patched in 3 places with mismatched components, and her galleys smelled faintly of old coolant. But she was Jalen's home. He guided the alien woman inside, where she collapsed onto the narrow bunk in his quarters. He brought her a mug of heated broth, thin but hot, and she drank it as though it were the finest delicacy in the galaxy. For a long while she said nothing, only sat wrapped in the thermal cloak, her fingers trembling less with each passing minute. Finally she spoke. Her voice was still hoarse, but steadier. "Why did you spend your credits for me?" Jalen leaned back against the wall. "Because no one else would. And I couldn't just watch you die out there." She studied him, tilting her head in a way that reminded him of a curious bird. "You are human?" He nodded. "I am called Enya," she said softly. "My people, we are not welcome here. I was taken, traded, lost. They left me with nothing." Her eyes glistened, though no tears fell. "I thought it would be easier to sleep forever." Jalen felt a pang deep in his chest. He knew the sting of being unwanted, of being abandoned by systems that only cared for credits and power. "Well," he said, trying to sound lighter than he felt, "you're aboard my ship now. That means you're not nothing. You're a passenger." Her lips curved in the faintest ghost of a smile. Over the next days, Enya grew stronger. She explored the ship with quiet wonder, running her fingers along the control panels, watching the stars streak past when Jalen took them into drift space. Jalen learned fragments of her story, She had been taken from a crystalline world in the outer rim, sold into servitude, then discarded when she became too weak to work. Her people had strange gifts, energy sensitivity, she explained, that made them valuable and feared. But her abilities had faded with her strength. "You saved me when I had nothing left," she told him one evening as they sat in the galley, eating rehydrated stew.
"Why?"
"You had little for yourself." Jalen chuckled dryly. "Guess I'm not good at watching people suffer. And I know what it's like to feel alone in the galaxy." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand. "Warm now, alive. Then we are not alone anymore." But kindness never came without consequence. 3 days after leaving Chiron Station, a patrol ship hailed them. The emblem of the Syndicate Guild shimmered on the screen, the very slavers who had once owned Enya. "This is the patrol frigate Talvrin," the calm officer barked. "Prepare to be boarded. We're searching for stolen property." Jalen's blood ran cold. Property. That was how they saw her. Enya stiffened beside him, eyes wide. "They seek me." Jalen's instinct screamed at him to run, but his freighter was slow, his weapons obsolete. Fighting meant certain death. He cut the comm and turned to her. "Do you want to go back to them?" Her answer was immediate, fierce.
"No."
"I would rather die in the void." That was all he needed. "Then hold on." He slammed the throttle, pushing the Wanderer's luck into a reckless drift jump, engines screaming as the hull shuddered. Warnings blared across the console. The patrol frigate opened fire, plasma bolts grazing their shields. The ship rattled like it would come apart, but then Enya pressed her palms against the bulkhead, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. A strange hum filled the cabin, as though the very stars resonated with her. The next plasma bolt bent away, veering harmlessly into the void. Another fizzled before impact. Jalen gaped. "You're doing that?" She nodded, sweat beading on her forehead. I remember now. My people can shape energy. The slavers feared us for it. That is why they caged us." With her help, the Wanderer's luck slipped into drift space, leaving the Syndicate frigate behind. When the stars steadied again, Jalen exhaled a laugh of disbelief. "Remind me never to underestimate you." Enya smiled weakly. "You gave me warmth when I was frozen. Now I give you protection when you are hunted. This is balance." Days turned into weeks. They traveled together, taking small cargo jobs, evading syndicate patrols, sharing meals and stories under the hum of the ship's lights. Jalen found himself looking forward to her laughter, rare but bright. He noticed how she tilted her head when studying starlines, how she hummed softly when calibrating the NAV system. One evening, as they watched a nebula flare violet and gold through the viewport, Jalen spoke quietly. "I spent my last credits on you, Enya. At the time, I thought I'd made a stupid decision. But now, I think it was the best one I've ever made." She turned to him, her starlit eyes shimmering with something more than gratitude. "And I thought I was meant to die alone in the cold. But you showed me I was wrong." Silence stretched between them, soft and full. Then she leaned closer, resting her forehead against his. And for the first time in a long while, Jalen felt like the galaxy wasn't such a lonely place after all.